Welcome back to another Recruiting Essentials episode of the War Room here at Prep Baseball. I'm your host, Shooter Hunt, Vice President of Scouting at Prep Baseball, joined by a really special guest, a guy who I've really been trying to have on for a while because of how much value I see in the program and the conference in general. But it is Nate Cole, recruiting coordinator at Harvard University. Nate, thanks for being on.
Peter, good to see you. Appreciate you having me on here.
And what's cool is we've met out on the road so much. And one of the interesting things from my standpoint is, right, I travel the entire country, coast to coast, seeing all these players. And you'll get a lot of the bigger private schools, like a Vanderbilt, right, or a Duke. They're going coast to coast. You kind of see them all over. But then you also see the Ivy League, because your roster, and I went through your roster at Harvard. You guys have 12 different states, plus one different country, because you have a kid from Canada on there. And obviously the university in general has kids from all over the world. It is a renowned university historically and obviously presently. But I do see you all over the place, starting at the NPI in early June, going up into New England, all over the country. What are your flight miles like? Do you like going all over the country?
Yeah, we get out there, no question. And it spans from tournaments and local showcases, outside our neighborhood here in Boston to what we're doing on the West Coast. So, and you were right too. It's the Ivy League across the board. All the coaches in the league work super hard and get out across the country. And yeah, obviously the breadth that the Harvard name and academics provide, it allows us to recruit from coast to coast and everywhere in between. So in order to do that, we got to get out there, no question.
It's kind of similar, like we talk about, like SEC. Everybody's like, I want to go SEC. Like, you guys actually have to recruit in a similar way, because you probably get so many applicants. Everybody wants to go into Harvard, right? That's a business decision. That's not just the 4 years on campus, it's the 50 years after. But you have to go out because everybody wants to come in. But hey, you guys still have uniforms. You play a good ball game. The Ivy League's really talented. They scare every team every year in the regional. You have to go out there and see who is good. How do I separate this 1,500, 1,600 SAT from the other 1,600? What is that process like for you guys when you're going out, finding a kid who is academic but who can also play?
Yeah, well, I think the process starts much like any other school, and you mentioned like the SEC and the ACC schools. The process is similar to them in that we're acquiring names, we're talking to high school coaches, we're talking to travel ball coaches, we're talking to Prep Baseball Report guys, we're talking to yourself. We're the acquisition of names is very similar. Obviously there's some background work that needs to be done on my end, on our end, in order to kind of sift through some of those academics. Making sure that when you mentioned the NPI, when I show up at the NPI, I better know who's academic on the field. Otherwise, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole that's going to waste my time, right? So, just having an understanding of and I'm not in the business of wasting time. A lot of times we'll get right to the point with certain recruits in terms of looking at their transcript and making sure that it matches up for what we're looking for here at Harvard. But yeah, there's certainly some local tournaments, some national tournaments, anywhere from Boston to, what we're doing, obviously at Lake Point and into Texas and California. But yeah, it spans the country. We're fortunate, that, again, I think there's a lot of outstanding academic students out there in today's baseball recruiting atmosphere. So we got to sift through that. The unique part about us is that, we can't bring in 14, 15, 16 guys. That's just not happening at Harvard. We have a certain number of academic slots or where we are supporting a individual's academic admissions process. So, we have to be extremely selective. We have to get it right. We have to be able to be selfish in what we're looking for in terms of positions and positional versatility. In terms of arms that we think are going to make sure they show up to campus. So it's a elongated process and probably much more than some of the other, schools. We're going to make sure that, we get the right guys for our locker room.
Yep.
That I think is super important. We're getting kids from great families and obviously kids that, are super devoted, in both the classroom and on the baseball field.
It's and you kind of talk about like having that track record. The recruiting process is slowed down. NCAA put the rules on August 1st after your sophomore year. But it sounds like you guys have always kind of been along those lines. You need to get the transcript. And now, is it helpful? Now I'm talking to parents and the kids, and I always say like Twitter is essentially your LinkedIn. This is your resume. This is something you can utilize to help coaches see it. Is it helpful for a kid to put his GPA into his Twitter profile?
For us, 1000%. Yeah. I mean, and again, every GPA nowadays can look a little bit different once you look under the hood, and get that transcript. I see a lot of 4.0s on those Twitter bios. And that's
you're saying there's Fugazi 4.0s out there?
Yeah. Yep. Sometimes. But it is extremely helpful, in terms of, we're just like any other school. I'm spending a lot of time on Twitter, and especially during this time of year, in terms of the acquisition of names and seeing, guys at winter showcases and tracking progress from previous years and the summer. But yeah, that academic profile, sometimes, obviously people have, or guys will have, their test scores on there too. And that's huge. That's a big help. No question.
That has to be awesome, that when you have those test scores and you talk about, like, we're down at the MPI, and I'm the same way, talking with these other coaches, gathering those names, but you don't have time to waste days, right? You go down the MPI, like, it's a great buffet. You come to the future games, there's talent all over the place, but every coach comes in, the good ones like you guys come in with a plan. Here's a guy who's a profile guy that we might have a chance to get. It's important for you to stack those names, because then it gives that kid more opportunities to perform in front of you. And are there any other things that you would suggest to a future prospective student athlete, a 2027 right now? Should he be emailing you? How should he go about getting on your radar?
Yeah, obviously email's great. We're having conversations with the high school coaches and the travel coaches. That's certainly super important. I think, just the ability to have the guys on campus, obviously at camps, is huge. We just finished up a camp this past weekend, and the opportunity to spend some time with those 27s and get an understanding of where they're at, and obviously in January in the Northeast, we're inside, so in our bubble, and we have outstanding facilities, but the opportunity to get a chance to see those guys, and then obviously we're going to track them into their high school season, and then certainly we're going to have time to see them in the summer. But yeah, I mean, if you're, let's just say you're from California, it's not like we can just get out there back and forth every single, week. There's only so many times we're going to go out there, right? So when we make sure we go out to California, we better have a pretty darn good laid out plan. So we're seeing as much as we can in a small amount of time.
And what we try to do is try to stack those events like right ahead of time. There's a workout on, say, Wednesday, so that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the tournament, you're able to watch kind of what you saw, and it's kind of a bang for your buck situation, because hey, you're going to fly to Orange County for this. Like, okay, if I'm here, I'm missing something in Nashville, or I'm missing something down in the Dallas area, or I'm missing something in Florida, whatever it may be. I want to make sure that I get something out of this. And it's really important that now I'm speaking to the recruits and the families to just be open about, hey, this is what I'm pitching. Here are some updated stats. In sending those emails to Harvard, like, hit each coach. This is why I want to have some interest. Here are my scores. Just make it easier for coaches is what I always try to tell these parents, because you want to find good players. You want to find the future of your program. You're not actively negging anybody. You're not actively just saying, no, we don't want to watch you. Hey, I'm trying to find you, dude, but there's 8 fields here right now. This kid looks good. And then I just realized he had a 2.8 GPA and he'll never dig out of that. That's like, that has to be something that frustrates you as well.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, like, for example, the futures games, there's a lot of really, really good students out there today. So each state might have, and then again, without getting into the specifics of their transcript and SAT scores and things like that, but each state might have 2 to 4 guys that have the opportunity to potentially get into Harvard.
Mhm.
So obviously, if there's 4 games going on at once at the futures game, I better have a pretty good understanding of who's pitching when and where and on what field and in what inning and things like that, because I can't be spinning my head around to 4 different fields, and that's where, or at least for myself, I know I can get myself into trouble.
Welcome to my world. I always have to remind
Yeah.
myself of future games. Be where you are. Be where
Yep.
you are. Be present at the game that you're watching. And I mean, going through your roster, and I mean, all around the country, there's certain schools where in my head, like, hey, this is a high academic school. I know each spot throughout the country, this is a high academic spot. But there are, like you talked about, like there are kids who have Harvard type grades that aren't at those schools. So being proactive is really important to me. Like you said, get on the radar, come in those preseason events for us, getting ready for those camps, which at Harvard, right, is showing some initiative. Hey, I like this place. I have interest. Hey, I should go to Cambridge, look around and do my thing,
Yep. No question. No question.
What about the roster? Like, is there a roster limit right now for you guys in the Ivy League school, in the Ivy League?
Yeah,
or is it different than the 34 that we've been talking about with all these other schools?
And again, every Ivy League school is built a little bit different, right? So, I talked about the academic slots that each program gets. Each program has a little bit of a different number. Some of the more prevalent academic schools in the Ivy League, your Harvard, your Yale, your Princeton, they might have a smaller number than some of the others. So again, we got to be very specific in terms of what we're looking for in terms of versatility. But when it comes to the numbers, we're not getting to 34, 35, 36. We're not getting to the point where we're going to have to make roster decisions and cut anybody. So that's where, making sure that we get it right is obviously super important. Again, no one is leaving Harvard. You're not going to, leave a Harvard degree on the table. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We can't utilize the transfer portal. That is not something that we do here at Harvard.
Are there no transfers at all?
The school in general takes about 10 transfers per year.
Wow.
And, so not too often are we dealing with one of those guys being a baseball player.
You're really funding other programs though recently.
Yeah. No question. Yeah, you see the level of talent that's in the Ivy League that's going on to play their grad years, and you've certainly seen that in the past few years. And those Jackson Appel at Texas A&M and Hensler now at Texas A&M, and Logan Bravo was with Duke last year. You're going to see a couple of our guys from last year. Ben Rounds and Jake Berger are going to become household names at Duke again this year.
I didn't know Jake Berger's at Duke. I love Jake Berger at Area Codes. Oh man, he was awesome. I was pumped for you. You're going to have Rhett the Jet, my producer, is an A&M guy who's just like giddy about this little pipeline that's working down there. But it is fascinating to me. Like, do you have to split up each class? So you have 4 years, let's say I think in the Ivy, right? You have to do it in 4 years, right? You can't extend a redshirt fifth.
Correct. You have the Ivy does not have graduate players, right? So there's that. You cannot be a graduate player in the Ivy League. You can extend your graduation a little bit into to do the 4 years in a 5-year time clock, but for the most part, guys are going to get after that degree right away.
In 4 years, well, I would struggle in 4 years at Harvard. I'm a slow reader. It takes me a while. I'm going to need that extra 2 semesters at least.
You and I both share. I tell people all the time, I just work here. I certainly did not go here. And that's a credit to the guys that are in my locker room.
And so what about like just sport in general, right? The Ivy League built on the backs of academics, right? Like really pro academics, but it's been a really historically good sports situation, but like, is there another aspect of the way you coach on campus at an Ivy League school? More so like, hey, we're building future leaders. What is athletics supposed to be? Is there like a mantra for Harvard? Like, hey, what are these guys supposed to become and what should I be doing with them?
Yeah, certainly. I think the neat part about this place is that it attracts those type of people innately, right? So, the guys in our locker room, their majors may span across the board, but they are outstanding human beings. They work super hard. They're devoted in everything they do, so that just comes about naturally. And yeah, we're doing the best to foster them as leaders, as men. That's my job. That's ultimately my responsibility, and Coach Decker is the best at that, without question, and does an outstanding job with the guys. So, I think through, the work that we call it across the river, our campus is separated by the Charles River. But
It's
the work
gorgeous,
that they
by the
do,
way.
yeah,
Anybody around the country who's not been, like, it's worth just going to City of Boston, heading over to Harvard to just walk around.
yeah, no question. So the work they do across the river within the academic space is certainly fostering that environment as well.
It really is incredible, and just the entire aspect. I always think like these smart kids who have so much going on off the field still go over to get workouts and all this stuff going, which in the future is going to pay complete dividends. But they are really smart kids, right? You're working with a higher level academic kid. How do you specifically, coaching wise, like? I've talked with the other coaches. They have all like, we have our pitching lab, this lab, all these things. Like, how do you not or paralysis by analysis? How do you steer away from that with these kids who are probably kind of OCD, like they are already overachievers?
Yeah, I think that obviously starts in the recruiting process. Getting to know the individuals.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, we're looking for baseball players first, and then we'll figure out the academics. And the ideal recruit at Harvard is someone, that is driven to be a professional baseball player. He just happens to be really, really good in the classroom. I think as we work into the fall semester, there are some restrictions around the amount of time that we can spend with them.
Hmm.
So in order for them to be, the best that they can be, and in order for them to, work towards a career of playing in professional baseball, there's obviously work that they're going to have to do on their own. So they're going to have to get better, working in the cages, working in the weight room, whatever the case may be. So, through the recruiting process, finding out who has a plan, who understands that plan, who's, super motivated in terms of getting better, and is willing to chase that dream of being a professional baseball player. So, there's a lot that goes into it. Yes, some of these guys are super analytical, but it's my job to learn how each individual learns,
Yeah.
and try to coach them based off that, and what works best for them.
That's the best part about coaching, right? Getting those relationships. Each kid's different. What's going to make this guy tick? It has to be so rewarding when it finally does. I mean, I was Googling a lot of your arms the last couple of years because I'm like, who is this kid? I think you guys played Miami one game. And I'm like, this kid is backspinning fastballs. And I learned he was like a 5-star punter. He went to this school. It was like, I've gone down so many rabbit holes on Harvard rosters. But like, talk to me about the recruiting process. So like the 2027s this summer, August 1st, right? Phone calls. You're calling a kid. What kind of conversation do you want to have with him? What are the questions? Like, you're talking about, like, you want a self-starter. Like, how does a kid portray that? And what do you want to hear on the phone from a prospective recruit?
Yeah, I think that process starts again, much like if I was an SEC or ACC coach, just starting to get to know the individuals, learning what makes them tick, obviously what their aspirations are, both in the classroom and on the baseball field. Again, I think a big part of it too is just getting to know the kids. Hey, are they individuals that I want to spend time with, that we as a coaching staff and Coach Decker is going to get along with? And, we spend a lot of time together, especially in the spring semester, right? You want to, you want to enjoy each other's company and enjoy each other's time. So it's those conversations kind of lend themselves in a natural direction. Again, taking a look under the hood in terms of the transcript, what are they currently taking in terms of advanced placement classes or honors classes? What do they have on the docket for their senior year in terms of classes? So
Yeah.
working through some of those academics, hey, what was your test score? What are you doing to improve that test score? What are we doing study wise to make sure that when we do take the SAT or ACT, we're in a really good spot. Getting to know families. Again, we have such a small number in our locker room that one bad fish can really ruin that locker room. And again, we're not shipping guys out, right? When we commit to an individual, we're going to commit to that guy for 3 years, 4 years, depending on how the draft goes. So, we got to make sure we get it right. No question.
Yeah, and not only the 3 and 4 years, but like that's going to be a grad. He's going to be a baseball grad. He'll be back for the next 40 years, coming back to pay homage to the university. It's a lot of the coaches we've talked to is just like having some normalcy, be yourself on the phone. I want to know about it. Like you talked about too with families, like you are trying to really, and it sounds like you really have to do not some digging, but like, hey, is this going to work? This is what we have built. This is what I can work with too. Like, right. You're the player development, you do academic stuff, you're recruiting, you're all over all these different pieces. I don't want to have to worry about this off the field or this in the classroom. I want to be able to just coach you and make you better on the diamond. So like those phone calls and even text messages, I'm sure you're constantly trying to figure a little bit more out about those guys.
Yeah. And again, the Ivy League model is a non-scholarship model, right? So, obviously finance is something that comes into play. Now, again, Harvard with their endowment does an outstanding job with financial aid, and we can usually find a way to make that work. But at the end of the day, our guys are paying to come to Harvard. Now, certainly we feel like the return on investment is pretty darn good, at Harvard, and the doors that this degree here can open up, or any Ivy League degree can open up. But finances is a piece to the puzzle, certainly.
And kind of talk about those scholarships. We were talking a little bit about it because there was the Ivy League did come out and opt out of the revenue sharing of the NCAA settlement. What does that mean?
For us, it just means we're going about our business as usual, really. Okay. And again, still making it so the impetus behind everything we do is academic and athletic based. There are opportunities for, some NIL and things like that. But in terms of the revenue sharing, that is involved in some of these Power 4 programs, us opting out is not, a piece to the puzzle there when it comes to revenue sharing. Our rosters obviously are not going to be affected by this. Again, we're going to continue to have the similar number of academic slots per year. So in all honesty, it's business as usual. If I had a magic wand for, what things are going to be like a year, 2, 3 years down the road, I'd be lying because again, I'm not sure anyone knows at this point. But
well, if there's ever any revenue sharing of that endowment, I'd love to get involved in that situation. That $50+ billion endowment. It is fascinating, like the purity of the sport. And like I like, obviously, like I love the big conferences. They're going out. These kids are getting paid. Cool. But like, hey, sport, academic, this is just a 4-year process to build you for the rest of your life, and building future leaders of the world is really an awesome thing that the Ivy League does. I am always behind that 100%. Anything else? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think, if we're in conversations with a recruit and they are focused on the now, in terms of, okay, hey, the money that's involved, we're probably not a fit, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, we certainly feel like we're going to make that up on the back end because of what that degree can do, and setting them up for the rest of their life. I essentially tell recruits, in a way, we're offering a lottery ticket for the rest of your life. And so their focus needs to be on the 40-year plan and not
It sounds like you're getting a really mature kid, right? Right? Like this kid has a future. If you're going to Harvard, like, hey, I'm planning some things ahead. It's not just like, how am I scraping for tomorrow? No, like each day I have a plan, kind of some self-starters out there. Any other changes that you see coming down or things that you would be a proponent of in the future? Even like, I'm sure like if there were no dead periods, you got to do your homework nonstop.
Yeah, again, there's people a lot smarter than me that are working through the changing environment that's going on.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if I can't foresee what's going to happen 2, 3 years down the road. I just know that at the end of the day, the Ivy League is probably going to stick to, what has made us successful all these number of years. And certainly we're going to continue to try to recruit the best student athletes that we can, that are, again, hopefully going to play in professional baseball for a long time. But if not, they're going to be in major league front offices. They're going to be running, some finance companies and so on and so on. So,
or going to med school, business, whatever
Yeah.
it may be. We got a bunch of Harvard guys. This has been awesome. I do want to ask you a couple fun questions, brought to you by shop.prepbaseball.com. Check out all the apparel. I got a nice little hat right there. That might be my go-to hat. I might have to give you a little swap, get a little Harvard action, try to fool some people with a Harvard sweater out here on the West Coast.
Hey, we got you, Shooter.
Dinner spot. Where am I going? If I come to Harvard, this is a spot you got to go, because when I go out into the world and somebody say, "Oh, you've been to Harvard," and I'll say, "Yeah, I've been to this spot." And then are there any coffee places?
Well, number one, Pinocchio's Pizza. That is
Okay.
the famous pizza place that's been in all the movies. That
Is that a Good
entails
Will
some.
Hunting video? Is
Yeah,
that a Good Will Hunting?
yeah. The Social Network,
Okay.
Goodwill Hunting, Pinocchio's has had a piece in all those. So
Okay.
definitely Pinocchio's.
All right.
The Russell House Tavern is another place that we always suggest to, we'll take all our recruits, and that's an awesome spot in the center of Harvard Square, which is an awesome area.
Are there some spirits there that can be worked with a meal?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of those places in Harvard Square as well. So,
Excellent. And then any coffee spots?
well, we were talking earlier. There's about 4 or 5 Dunkin' Donuts within a
There you go. New
3
England
square
giving a
mile. So
donkey shout out.
yeah, at times I would consider myself a Starbucks man, but there is no loss for the number of Dunkin' Donuts you can find within this area. Without
Donkey's
question.
planting his flag, a true New England
Yeah.
guy. Nate Cole from Harvard. Really pumped that you were able to come on. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward. I saw you guys are going to Florida. I'll be locked in on that series, so get ready for that.
No, I appreciate you having me, certainly, and hopefully, I'm sure I'll see you bright and early in the June recruiting period down at Lake Point with MPI and throughout the duration of the summer.
I'll save you a seat.
Appreciate it.
Until next time, we'll see all you guys at the ballpark.